Stop and search powers for police are set to be permanently enhanced by under Boris Johnson's new strategy to tackle crime. The Prime Minister is using his first day after leaving self-isolation following a positive coronavirus contact to detail his new so-called beating crime plan.
Details include a permanent relaxing of conditions on the use of Section 60 stop and search powers, under which officials can search someone without reasonable grounds in an area where serious violence is expected. Mr Johnson's announcement comes as the chairman of the Police Federation prepares to deliver a letter to Downing Street, setting out officers' anger over a pay freeze and objections to how the plan was announced.
Well, joining us now is former policeman and author of the book How to Be a Police Officer, Graham Wettone. Thank you for joining us, Graham. Tom and I were discussing in the last hour some of the measures that are coming while Boris Johnson is trying to bring into place, and it includes things like a named police officer for every person, tags for burglars. I mean, is there anything in this that we're expecting that's going to revolutionise the way we're solving crime, or is it just more of the same and it's just Boris Johnson talking a lot as usual?
Yeah, I think you've summed it up there. It's, there already is a practice in place. Victims Code's been in place for some time now. It was revamped, enhanced, etc. You already have a single point of contact, a police officer whose name you will get. That doesn't improve the service, doesn't mean they're going to come around and investigate your crime, it just means you'll have their name and number. And the names and numbers of the officers you're going to get, I think it's something like 5 million crimes. I saw one stat, I think it was last year. 130,000 officers, do the maths. Not all the officers will be investigating a crime either. So that it's going to be a small number of officers who are going to be available to have their name and number given to victims of crime. Then you have to factor in the fact that they are going to be off duty, working nights, doing demonstrations, working at football matches, on courses. So they won't always be available for you. It just seems like smoke and mirrors. It's just words again. Just words, no real actions to actually deal with beating crime.
People do have this sense, though, don't they, that we sort of miss those local community policemen where people would go on walks around a local neighbourhood, you'd see a police officer wearing his big tool hat and sort of the community would feel that there was a real police presence in the town. Is there a sense that politicians are sort of harking after that era that seems to have disappeared?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, that's the foundation of policing. But again, come back to it, was the Conservatives that basically decimated policing. You have to prioritise. So when your budget is cut, your priority has to be 999 calls, emergency calls. So you have to have your emergency response teams staffed as much as you can to deal with those emergency calls that come in 24/7, 365 days a year. So your neighbour community policing was one of the things that had to be reduced or even decimated completely when those cuts came in. We're now just trying to play catch up for the last 10 years. And I find it strange that this beating crime plan is coming out later today. From my knowledge anyway, there's been little or no consultation with the people entrusted to beat crime, i.e. the Police Federation, police chiefs. I'm not sure they've been consulted as to what would be some good initiatives.
And it's no wonder that the Police Federation of England and Wales say they have no confidence in the Home Secretary if they're not even being consulted on things like this. But, you know, talking about sort of bobbies on the beat and things like that, one of the key things that police officers do, particularly in, I don't know, what you might call rough areas, is stop and search, for instance. That's one of the tools they have in their toolbox, particularly for tackling knife crime. Boris Johnson's expected to say that he's going to relax the conditions on the use of stop and search powers to take more knives off the street. Now, every single person in this country wants to take knives off the street, but this will be incredibly controversial, won't it? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's not quite an enhancement. I think that history tells us, I think it's Theresa May that actually put additional conditions on Section 60. And it's Section 60 you're talking about. There's different powers to stop and search. Effective stop and search, Section 1, is stop and search on suspicion of crime. Section 60 only comes in, and it's authorised by a senior officer when either serious violence has taken place or is likely to take place. So if they get some sourced intelligence or a phone call comes in from someone saying, we know these people are going out with knives or weapons, whatever, to injure somebody, police officers cannot then use Section 1 because they have to have reasonable grounds to suspect. I have to see someone with something. Section 60 is the piece of legislation that comes in that allows them then to stop people without those reasonable grounds, which is why it's a deterrent, not just a detection power. So it's a deterrent. We announce the fact we're going to use these enhanced extra powers of stop and search in a specific geographical area for a specific period of time, so people are aware it's available for police officers to use.
Theresa May, who sort of watered down those powers with, if I understand it correctly, only more senior police officers enabled to enact them. Is it your understanding, or do you think that that was something that actually led to the subsequent rise in crime that we saw? We saw crime fall right through until around 2016, and then it started to rise again. Do you think that the reduction in stop and search was something to do with that?
I think there has to be a correlation, Tom, in that. I think you have to look at the figures and speak to officers on the street. I was teaching recruits at that time. There's a real, even now, some police officers are sometimes reluctant to use their powers because they know they're going to be filmed. They know it's going to be put on social media. There's very little chance to challenge what's said or they're alleged of doing during that inaction. We've seen it endless times on different media clips. When you use stop and search, then you're almost opening yourself up to criticism and the hindsight experts. So I think there's a reluctance within policing on occasions to use stop and search effectively. I think that lends itself to an increase in crimes and the violence that we see, based on Mrs May tinkering with the legislation.
I'm concerned slightly, and I think a lot of people will be, about whether the police is an attractive sort of career path for so many young people these days. I mean, we're hearing nowadays you might even need a degree to have gone to university or done a degree apprenticeship. And of course, when we hear things like they're not getting a pay rise, some people might say, well, actually, I'll probably earn more working full-time in a cafe or something like that. I mean, I want people who will make really good police officers to join the police force. I don't want them to necessarily need to have all these degrees and things like that. I mean, what would you say, to young people perhaps, or people who just want a career change? How would you attract them to joining the police as a career path?
We could spend all day talking about that. I still think it's a great career. It's very diverse. No 2 days are the same. It gives you, I'm not saying it's exciting as such, but it gives you an excitement. It gives you, there's a lot of job satisfaction. But by the same token, there's so much administration these days. There's so much scrutiny on what police officers do. It's a difficult career. It's very rewarding. I think that police pay needs to be looked at. Pay and conditions needs an urgent review. I don't think it is. We've heard ministers saying all morning on news channels, valued and supported. I don't feel it's valued and supported within government, within society to a certain degree. I think the majority do support policing. There's still huge numbers applying to join the police, and I think that's great. Whether they then stay for 20, 30 years, retention is the biggest crisis in policing. Some people do it for 3 or 5 years. I think they're up to 9,000 so far of the 20,000 they want to recruit. It'd be interesting to see how many of those 9,000 have actually lasted the course so far, because I think people are doing it for a couple of years and then leaving for either better paid jobs in the private sector with the skills they've gained in policing.
Well, Graham, you've been a great Graham Wettone, former police officer. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you.